Our guest presenter today is Jason Eisenhut, VP of Human Resources with Employco, an affinity partner of the EACA that provides payroll services for our members as well as insurance products. And with that, I'm going to turn over the presentation to Jason Eisenhut. Just so you know, though, as we get into the program, there will be an opportunity to ask questions at the end of the program. But if you have a pressing question that you'd like to get answered before we move forward, just use the chat box at the lower right-hand part of your screen. I will be monitoring that, and we'll let Jason know that there's a question hanging out there. But without further ado, let me get out of the way here and introduce Jason Eisenhut. Jason?
Thanks, Jim, and welcome to today's webinar. As Jim mentioned, my name is Jason Eisenhut. I work in the Human Resources Department at Employco. And also, as Jim mentioned, Employco provides human resources outsourcing services to our clients, which could include payroll, workers' compensation, union fringe reporting, employee benefits, employee relations, kind of the whole gamut related to human resources. But today we're here to talk about employee engagement, which is a really exciting topic. It's been around for a while, but companies still struggle with it, and it's still a great idea to focus on it whenever possible. Okay, so what is employee engagement? Here at Employco, we define it as something that's based on the emotional commitment to the employer and the motivation to help it succeed. And there's a couple other prominent organizations that I'll talk about, Caterpillar, and they'll also have a case study in a few slides from now to show you kind of how their results are showing when they focus on employee engagement, and Dell. But Caterpillar defines it as the extent of an employee's commitment, work effort, and desire to stay in an organization. Whereas Dell defines it slightly differently. It's to compete today, companies need to win over the minds and hearts of employees in ways that lead to extraordinary effort. But in our three definitions and basically all other employee engagement definitions, there's the underlying theme that it's more than just how happy the employee is. It's really how committed they are to the organization, and do they give extra effort to help it succeed. Okay, as I mentioned, it's more than just being happy or satisfied. Employee engagement goes a step further. It's okay to have satisfied employees in an organization, and most do, and most would be happy with some satisfied employees, because that's better than the opposite of being disengaged or unhappy. And those type of workers obviously will lead to bad morale, increased turnover, poor employee retention, poor productivity. So satisfied employees are okay, but ultimately all organizations want to strive towards getting those employees to the engaged level. So a satisfied employee is more likely to be focused on compensation, benefits, and working conditions, whereas someone who's engaged is likely to be more focused on improving the culture and customer service of their company. Satisfied employees are happy or content with their jobs, whereas an engaged person feels emotional and committed to the company. Satisfied employees may be just doing the bare minimum. They're just doing kind of what is expected of them instead of going above and beyond the extra mile as like an engaged employee would. Satisfied employees can be satisfied, and a worker can be satisfied without being engaged. It's okay to be just happy, but ultimately, if we can get to someone to that engaged level, they're not only satisfied, but they're striving for continuous improvement. Okay, through our research at Employco, we've come up with 5 pillars or 5 components of employee engagement. The first one is career development, so it's how an employee perceives their company is going to handle, do they feel as though they have an opportunity to learn and grow within the company? The work environment, do the employees feel excited to go to work? Do they feel as though they're giving their best effort? Compensation benefits is fairly straightforward, but the kind of the nuance there is each employee might put a different level of expectation or importance on different employee benefits or different types of pay. So for example, a younger worker might have placed more importance or value on a tuition reimbursement program or student loan repayment program as an employee benefit compared to older workers who might be more happy with a larger employer contribution on a 401k plan or their medical insurance, the traditional benefits. Relationship management involves how the employee perceives their coworkers and the management team. So does a worker feel as though their coworkers and managers are putting forth their best effort? Do they do a good job? Kind of the old adage is employees don't leave companies, they leave supervisors. And although that can be debated today, it's still an important part of how an employee perceives the company and their likelihood to stay with that company. And finally, work environment. Do employees feel as though their company is a safe place to work? Do they feel respected in the workplace? Okay, some of the drivers of employee retention. So retention is oftentimes associated with engagement. It's one of the nice returns on investment that a truly engaged workforce will have on a company's improved retention. But a lot of the components are similar from retention to engagement. Typically, what's number one on most of these surveys is compensation and pay. So 44% of employees, this is a survey done last year, a study done last year by the Society of Human Resource Management, or SHRM. So in that study, they discovered that 44% of employees are likely to stay with a company if they perceive the compensation and pay to be a good level. Whereas on the other side, 56% of the employees will likely leave an organization if it's not at a good level. And you'll notice that each of these kind of different rows don't add up to 100% most times. And that's because there are other answer choices like neutral or has no effect or no impact on me. Now, what's interesting is that although a lot of these are important and they're the kind of the overall buckets that employers can strive to improve, each one of these is individualized based on each employee's perception and their unique family and career level. So for one person, they might believe the work-life balance or job security is number one because maybe they have a young family at home and those are really important things to that person, whereas maybe someone in their 60s with an empty nest and the kids are out of the house, the compensation and pay might be better or benefits might be important. So we try to make a unique attempt and customize each of these categories for each employee to make sure we're improving the best way possible and personalize it for each employee where we can. The employee engagement process, so the first step in this process, and I'll also talk about it in a future slide, is that the most important piece is that we start top down. That could come from the owner, the president, the CEO, the top level executive team really puts a focus and an effort into improving employee engagement, and they start some of these initiatives. So if employees don't think it's just an HR or a administrative function, that this is just going to be something that the company's fly-by-night initiative and it's going to be done in a couple years, if they're hearing it from the top level of the company, they know it's going to be an important initiative that's being considered seriously. So as some of these employee engagement initiatives, which we'll talk about in a couple minutes, start to progress and be initiated, that drives employees to become more committed with better work output, which then in turn drives better productivity, attendance, and retention, which ultimately the return on investment at the company level, they'll see improvements in the financial, operational, customer service. So improved productivity, improved profitability, revenue, and sales. Okay, so some key business outcomes. This is a 2016 study done. So when we compare the high-performing organizations and their engaged work units, so this was done, like I said, back in 2016, and it looked at some of the top organizations and how they are the ones with the best sales, best profitability comparing to some of their other peers in the industry. And inside those organizations, they looked at work units and departments and how the engaged units within those companies are performing compared to some of the others. So the high performing, high engaged business units have a 41% improvement on absenteeism and 24% to 59% improvement on turnover compared to the lower performing organizations. Shrinkage typically deals with loss of inventory or theft. There's a 28% improvement there for the high-performing, high-engaged workforces. And obviously, safety is a big component. So 58 to 70% improvement on safety, 40% improvement on quality. And then there's some of the financial metrics where customer improvement, productivity, sales, and profitability all see improvements. So these are real kind of real life numbers, a real return on investment for companies who focus and do a great job at improving employee engagement. Okay, so we'll look at one particular company. Caterpillar is one of these companies that we can really hold up to and look at. They put a lot of emphasis, even to this day, on employee engagement and building a great working environment. So back in 2002, they saw 50% of their employees were engaged and sales were just okay. So they decided to focus a lot of attention and effort into employee engagement. By 2009, so 7 years later, they saw that their employee engagement changed from 50% of the employees being engaged to 80% of the employees being engaged, which drove some of these financial numbers that in the data shown on the screen now. So 8.8 million annual savings from decreased attrition, absenteeism, and overtime from their European plant, 70% increase in output in less than 4 months with their Asia Pacific plant. They have a decrease in break-even point by almost 50% units per day, and a decrease in number of grievances on the union side by 80%, and $2 million increase in profit and 34% increase in highly satisfied customers at their startup plant. So this is kind of real life data, real life return on investment for Caterpillar, not too long ago. Okay, so Molson Coors Brewing, they're our second case study to show you. About 10 to 15 years ago, again, they focused on employee engagement, are still, like Caterpillar, still putting in a great deal of emphasis on employee engagement and kind of a goal of making their workplace a great place to work. Their engaged employees were 5 times less likely than non-engaged employees to have a safety incident of any kind, and 7 times less likely to have a safety incident that resulted in lost time. The average cost of a safety incident for engaged employees was $63 compared to the $392 average for non-engaged employees. Their company saved almost $2 million in safety costs in just 1 year. That was 2003. Low engagement teams fell behind engaged in sales volumes, and that difference in performance-related costs, their high engagement teams totaled a little over $2.1 million in that difference in the high-performing or high-engaged teams. Okay, one of the first things that companies do to address employee engagement, or at least get a baseline on it, is to start an employee survey. Typically, companies can use an outside third-party vendor like Employco to conduct the employee survey. Companies like us, when you outsource it to a third party, employees are more likely to feel it's unbiased and they can really have confidential, anonymous answers when they're answering. But like I mentioned before, if leaders can emphasize the importance of it, so the president, the CEO, the owner can really do a top-down initiative and do a lunch break meeting with employees, or send out an all-company email or toolbox talks and talk about it with their employees to emphasize how important employee engagement is. And then we're going to start with this employee survey. But the survey should be simple and quick. At Employco, our employee engagement survey is around 40 questions, and we can customize that for each client. It typically takes about 10 to 15 minutes for an employee to complete. Anything more than that, you're going to start to lose employees in terms of their completion rate on the employee engagement survey. If you have a large enough organization, you can split up and divide the employee responses. If you ask them to self-identify which department or division they work for, that can help you narrow down some of your efforts into some of the problem areas if it's just sales or operations or the executive management team. The larger the organization, the more you can drill down. But if it's a small organization, if you start asking some of these questions like, are you a manager? What department do you work in? Employees feel as though their responses can be narrowed down and the companies can figure out who answered which way. On an employee engagement survey, it's best to use an outside third party who does this for many other companies like we do, because if you have a core set of questions and you ask those same questions, those answers can be benchmarked against organizations across the country or across the nation. So you can see how not only how your answers are stacking up internally and where your low areas are compared to some of the areas in your company, but where are your company's answers compared to other organizations, maybe in the same industry or in the country or the world. We also believe it's important to ask open-ended questions, kind of free text style questions of your employees in the engagement survey. A couple that we like to include are For example, name one thing that you enjoy enjoy about the company, or why do you like working here? And tell us one thing that you would change about the company. And there's really some kind of really useful answers that you get from employees when you ask those type of open-ended questions, because they can elaborate and comment more than they can on some of these ranking and radio button style questions that are standard. But once the survey is complete, one of the first steps is to start to facilitate a focus group. So you can ask for volunteers to gather them in a conference room, a boardroom, a break room. And typically what employers will do is identify 3 to 4 areas, the lowest scoring areas, either internally or compared against the benchmark, and have employees focus on those areas to work on first. So what might happen is if it's a low scoring area where one of the questions you asked was, I believe my company does a good job at communicating with its workers. And let's say that's a low scoring area. So you could gather employees in a conference room to facilitate this focus group and ask, okay, here's one of the low scoring areas from our company. It's to deal with employee communication. Okay, group of employees, what are some ideas that you have to improve this area? What are some of your suggestions? And then maybe you write down 10 to 15 ideas from all the employees. You bring those suggestions and comments back to the management team, and maybe they have some things that they haven't thought of before. So maybe let's say suggestions 1, 3, and 6 can be implemented and approved, but 2 and 5 can't be for budget reasons or a variety of other reasons. But some of those might be put into play, might be implemented. The nice thing is that you communicate the results and those approved changes to employees. So as long as the employees feel as though their voice is being heard and not ignored, and some changes are taking place as a result of the survey, you're more likely to get good participation in the following years, which is that last bullet point. We suggest to repeat the survey on scheduled interviews at least once a year, if not more frequent. And ideally, it might be around the same time each year. So if it's October, November each year, and that's kind of a slow period for your company, try and repeat it during that same time period to avoid some of the variables or nuances that might affect scores if you don't repeat it during the same time each year. Okay, so here are some tips to improve employee engagement. These are kind of the broad ones that might be able to help most organizations, but as I mentioned, it's ideal to tailor some of the improvement initiatives based on work groups or employees, so you might be going down to the employee level. But here are some kind of overall broad ways to improve employee engagement at your company. We just talked about measuring employee engagement through employee surveys. Try to recruit the right type of candidate for your organization. So it might be someone who's great on paper, but maybe if you're feeling as though they're just an employee who might be satisfied and not truly engaged, you might try and stay away from that person or type of person. If the rest of your employees who are good performers but not engaged and they just don't have the personality for it, you might strive to start recruiting and hiring a different style employee who will fit well with your organization and has the right style that you're looking for. It's always a great idea to involve employees in goal setting. Sometimes this is during the annual formal performance review process to plan for the next fiscal year or plan year. It's a great idea to involve employees and ask them what their employee feedback is or opinions on, okay, so what are some areas that you think might be beneficial that you can concentrate on? What are some projects you think are beneficial for our department to look at for 2019? There might be some great ideas of things that us as managers, we may not have thought of before. So that's kind of at the formal, maybe annual performance review level, but then it's always great to have the formal, informal performance feedback, and at the same time, maybe it's a bi-weekly meeting with the staff to talk about how's everything, do you have any obstacles you're dealing with, here's an idea on this project you can think about. And then maybe during these informal meetings, we can also ask them for feedback or suggestions on how to improve and what goals we should be setting throughout the year. Good idea is to start an employee recognition program and celebrate accomplishments. But again, here we want to make sure we individualize this depending on the person. So where one person might really benefit from a common or visible employee recognition, maybe it's at an all-company meeting, and everyone, you ask the person to stand up or come to the front of the stage to be awarded something, and everyone claps. Someone might not find that as a benefit. Someone might actually find that as a detriment because of their personality might be more shy, so we might need to tailor the recognition for each person. Maybe someone might rather have a vacation day or a donation to the charity that they like as the bonus or the reward rather than public recognition. Offer new types of training and development. So one of the things that we're seeing is helpful is giving employees maybe a small budget that they can work with on their own, where it's an auto-approved budget for seminars or courses, as long as they're job related. Maybe it's $500 that the company gives to each employee, and as long as it's job related, still asks a supervisor for approval. But as long as it's job related, we're going to auto approve. If I work in human resources and I want to go to an employee benefits seminar, of course, we'll approve it. It's $390 approved, and that way the employee feels as though they have some say in their course and their employment in terms of their continuous improvement and education. And if it's larger dollar amount, like let's say it's a true tuition reimbursement program, it's up to $5,000 per year. There could be certain parameters put into place, maybe a clawback feature where if an employee leaves the company within 4 months after the reimbursement is made, after they receive a $2,000 check for their tuition, you could ask them to repay that if they don't stay a certain level of time after their class is reimbursed. Evaluate employees' workspaces, tool, and equipment. So maybe as a management team, we're just not aware that a computer is broken or a forklift has one of the pieces isn't working, or it's not starting after 5 times. So if we could just kind of informally ask employees throughout the year, how's everything going? How's your tools and equipment? Is there anything we can do to help? That really makes employees feel valued and their opinion matters, and it will help drive employee engagement. Encourage employees to share ideas. So this could be as simple as a $15 confidential suggestion box you put in the break room, where employees can do a little stuffed box. They can write something on a piece of paper. They don't have to sign their name, and they can give a suggestion for improvement. Or it might be as elaborate as an innovation award. So as employees, if you submit an innovation suggestion idea to us and it results in significant savings or profit or sales increase, we'll give you 1% of that saved cost, or 1% of the saved revenue or increased revenue, or $500 flat. So you can drive employee suggestions and improvement ideas through different types of programs. You can promote social events and volunteer work. We always hear that millennials are into making sure they have a difference in this world. So it might be, hey, we're going to close down on a Friday afternoon. Anyone who's interested, we can all get together as a company and go to a local charitable organization to lend a helping hand for half a day. And it really will, I mean, obviously it's a great thing to do, but it also helps employee engagement. And finally, conduct exit interviews. So as an employee leaves an organization, they might really have some great things, some great ideas or feedback that you could use on your existing workforce to make an improvement. Okay, in summary, employee engagement includes emotional commitment to the employer, so it's beyond just being satisfied. Someone who's engaged is not only satisfied, but they're committed to the work, to the company, and they're giving that extra effort every day in one of those 5 pillars or 5 components that we talked about earlier, from career development all the way through their work environment. Because with an engaged workforce, companies see upgrades or improvements in productivity, sales, and then decreased absenteeism, turnover, shrinkage, some of the other points that we're seeing, kind of that return on investment. So everything starts with kind of measuring a baseline where employee perceptions are and engagement is today. And improvement ideas can range anywhere from improving recruitment, employee relations, measuring and managing their performance, and how to improve training and development. Because the ultimate goal is not only to make sure employees are happy and engaged, which will drive employee retention and recruitment, but that will give you a return on the investment that every company is looking for in terms of increased sales, profitability, and productivity. So that is it for the main part of the presentation. So now we can open it up. And there's my contact information, so feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email, whenever you want. We can talk through it. But with that, I think Jim will open it up for questions. Jim, I think you might be on mute.
So let me start over. And thank you, Jason, for a terrific presentation. Certainly want to open this up to a Q&A time for Darlene, Haley, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask. Meantime, though, I wanted to share one of the things that sort of jumped out at me. I know that's important, certainly to our members, and that's the study from the Molson Coors people that the engaged employee is 5 times less likely to have a safety incident. And certainly, with the cost of workers' comp insurance and workers' comp claims, that's certainly a great motivation for why folks would want to work and pay attention on the engagement level of their employees. So, Darlene, Haley, if you have any questions that you'd like to offer up to Jason, feel free to just type them into the chat box below. I see Darlene is typing now, so that's awesome. The other thing I wanted to offer up as Darlene's offering up her question is for folks that Jason mentioned, measurement is an important piece of determining your employees' level of engagement. There's a great book out there that I would suggest that folks may want to take a look at. It's this one called The Ultimate Question by Fred Reichheld. And the ultimate question is the one that we often ask our customers, but can also be asked our employees. And that's on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend our company to someone you know as a great place to work? So that's the ultimate question. The way that the scoring works is that for anybody that's really engaged, they tend to answer it as a 9 or a 10. Somebody that's sort of neutral to that answer will give a 7 or 8 as their response. And somebody that's unhappy will score the response anywhere between a 0 and a 6. And so the reason for doing that, it creates a result that they call the net promoter score. And the net promoter score is basically mathematical result of adding up all of your engaged employees, all the nines and tens, and subtracting from that anybody that might be unsatisfied, anybody in the 0 to 6 range, and out of that you get what you call your net promoter score. And so over time, that's something that lots of Fortune 500 companies use to determine their level of employee engagement. Obviously, they can also use that for their customer engagement. So Jason, I see Darlene's question is that she thinks it's easy to get a feel of employees who work in an office, but what about field employees? Do you have any suggestions on how members that have field employees can do
Yeah,
that?
so there are a couple ways. I mean, the best way to gauge the employees' feel is through the employee survey. So obviously, it's always easier for office employees to have who have a kind of a dedicated computer workspace to answer these kind of surveys. But most surveys now, definitely the ones we deal with, are very mobile friendly. So obviously not all employees have work email addresses. So if there's a way to get a personal email address, even a Gmail email address for an employee, they can typically complete it on their mobile phone or maybe their home desktop computer. But if an employee just is not technology savvy, doesn't have a mobile phone, just doesn't want to deal with it, they don't have a personal email address, they just want to stay away, there are still the old-fashioned pen and paper forms that employees can complete. They just typically don't feel as though it's as confidential or anonymous as an answer, but we still can go the paper and pen route if needed.
And I would add to that, just as a thought for Darlene, that it might be the case that the same survey that you administer in your office is one that you could delegate to your city manager or your regional manager to conduct with your field employees at even if it's like Jason said, hopefully it's a quick and easy survey. Maybe something as quick and easy as the net promoter score ultimate question, and do that at a tool time talk or do that as a pre trade show meeting that you might be they may be having with their lead people or your key employees in that area. So that might be another way to get that done. Um, Haley has another question that the industry relies heavily on temporary employees, and so how do you engage temporary employees, or is it possible to get them engaged toward toward being emotionally
So
committed
there are, and I'll
to their
hopefully address
employer?
both, but the temporary employees could be those temp staffing firm year-round, maybe 5 month type of employees that are just there for 5 months to backfill a receptionist on maternity duty. Or also there's the short-term like trade show industry, just in and out for the I&D service. They're maybe not temps; they're really employees of your company, but just short-term employees. But either way, it's a great idea to, like you said, to survey them. Maybe if you're planning on doing an employee survey in October, you could ask for their home email addresses, their personal email addresses, if you know in advance, and you could let them know now. Hey, be on the lookout for something from us in October. We're going to survey employees. We really appreciate your kind of input on this. We want to make sure our company is doing as well as possible. Or if it is a temp employee from a temp staffing agency where it's maybe a 5-month assignment, you can still involve those employees because they're at your facility. They're probably familiar with, as almost as a new hire would be, with your work in progress.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. One other thought that came to mind for me in terms of temps, and obviously, if it's a labor contractor that's uh, putting out calls to the local labor union, how do you get those folks engaged? I think one of the ways is that, again, with the tool time talk or the little bit of meeting you might have before dispatching people to their various places of business, is that you as a company always look for the top performers, and those that are the top performers are the ones that, certainly based on the nature of the way that you call labor, but you as a labor company do in many different jurisdictions have an opportunity to call by name. So we look to identify those that we want to have put in front of our customers. Those are the ones that when we put in a call, we'll call by name, and hopefully inspire folks to go the extra mile in their performance for you, as even as a temp, not maybe a regular that you use out of the hall, but I believe you can inspire higher levels of performance by letting folks know how you operate, and that you look to cultivate folks that are
Agree.
that are
Great.
top level performers. So, Darlene, Haley, thank you for participating today. If you have any additional questions that you think of after the fact, and I know that happens to me often enough, feel free to reach out to Jason. There is his email address, or myself at jimworm@eaca.com. But we appreciate your participating in today's program, and we look forward to your participation in future programs of the EACA.
Yeah.
With that, Jason, I want to thank you once again for your time and efforts in putting together this very important presentation for us today. Thank you, folks, and goodbye.